What's up, everybody? Today I'm talking about A Quiet Place, day 1. And get ready because there will be spoilers. So, yeah, it's been a while. I feel like that's fine, right? It's been like, I don't know, over a month. So, I mean, what are you gonna do? As you might have noticed from the title, this is a script doctor episode. What that means is, I didn't like this movie that much, and I am going to criticize it in a very much, well, how do you fix this kind of way of looking at it? Before I go into those details, I want to at least give it some credit. The suspense was pretty good. I feel like the idea behind A Quiet Place is just pretty smart. Like, it puts everybody in a panic because wow, it is such a difficult situation to be in. I mean, not making any sound to survive is kind of crazy, but it's really interesting. It really delivers on what we want from a horror film, right? Like, the stakes should be obvious. If you mess up, you will die. One example that I really liked was so basically the guy, I don't know their names, I never know their names. So the guy basically is going for the cat, right? And like those, I guess they're aliens, I don't really know. I'll just say aliens. The aliens are over there on the side and all he has to do is grab the cat and go, right? But there's that element, of course, that we talked about where he has to be quiet when doing it. And the intensity ramps up every time there's just like anything that goes wrong because it's just so hard not to make noise. And the only way you could do that is by going slowly. And either way, the alien does show up and it's like right next to him. And that was a pretty intense scene. It's just things like that were really brilliant. And really in this movie, I didn't see the other Quiet Places. Quiet Places? What? The other Quiet Place movies. So I don't know how much they emphasized how strong these aliens were in those movies, but in this movie, wow, it was really emphasized. How many people were just getting picked up from like the middle of the street and immediately killed, which I think is a strong writing. Like, we want to see how bad it is. So with that established, we understand the intensity of this next scene, of what's going on and why like he's so worried about getting caught, basically. So yeah, that is just one example. I would say overall, when it comes to that sort of intensity that we're supposed to get from the film, it did it really well, and I was really happy that it did, because that's what you're going for. And sadly, now I had to focus on my critique because that is going to take the bulk of this video. Okay, so here is the thing. The motive that the main character had was just kind of dumb. And I'm putting in the word kinda in there just because like I'm trying to be nice, I guess. Like, it was weird. It was dumb. Her whole thing is, oh, this whole alien stuff is happening. I want to go get pizza. What the hell? Like, what are you talking about? Like, it is such an odd thing to do. And yeah, okay, fine. She explains it later. I'm gonna get to the point. I'm gonna explain why that's not good enough. The thing is, when you give your character a motive, at the very least, it has to be believable. And what I mean by that, what I mean by believable, is that an audience will see what they're doing and at the very least think to themselves, okay, that's likely, right? In this instance, that does not seem likely. Like, the world is ending, basically, right? And her idea is, let's get pizza. Like, they're kind of like jokey with it, with this kind of idea for like, Like, she almost knows that it's kind of ridiculous. But so what? It's still like the driving motive that's going on right there. Or at the very least, that's what we understand as an audience member. And that was just weird. I think later on, they give that justification of why. It's basically like, I don't know, it's like a nostalgia thing, you know? And if she's gonna die, she kind of wants this last moment there, right? And fine, you know, I can see that, you know? But that's only after she explains it later down the road. But you do have to really like suspense your belief about what's going on for that to just make any sense of what she's doing. Really, what I think they're doing, or what they're trying to do, is kind of like a double motive. This is kind of rare. I don't see it too often. But basically, you have to have the element that we discussed earlier, where the motives are believable. They feel like, oh yeah, that you know, is likely to happen. One really good example is in Ant-Man. So basically, this is what was kind of happening. Ant-Man, he's kind of, well, in charge in some way. Like, I haven't seen the movie in a while, but what I remember is that he is the main guy. He's going to be trained. He is going to go through the mission, blah, blah, blah. But the girl who is also there, like, she's the daughter of the guy who's helping Ant-Man, and she's upset. She's like, well, you know, I could do it, blah, blah, blah. And he, you know, the dad gets very upset and like basically just tells her no, you know? And she really thinks that a big part of it is that he doesn't believe in her, basically, right? So that's one motive. And it makes sense. We could see that happening. Like, we don't at that moment be like, well, come on, just let her do it. That's not usually, I don't think that's anybody's reaction to it. And then later on, what we see is, oh, Ant-Man basically explains to her, hey, there's actually a much deeper reason. You're his daughter, right? I'm just a nobody. Like, if something happens to me, it's not a big deal. And by doing that, there's a double motive. And each motive feels like it's very likely to happen within that given context. And as you probably noted, the second motive is usually much deeper and more compelling, right? But keep that in mind, both are at least believable. I feel like Quiet Place tried to do something like that, and they really failed just because the first motive doesn't really click with us. So that's just one criticism. My other main criticism is that they kill off the guy that she's initially with, like he's a nurse or whatever. That was wild to me. Like, it's almost kind of funny just because it's just weird. It's such a weird thing to do narratively. They could have developed a really good relationship arc, and I don't even think they considered it, because in the beginning they're not friends. She like straight up says that they're not friends, right? Like, she's really like, she's aggravated because he's like trying to be her friend, but really she knows it's like, my guy, you work here, you know what I mean? Like, this is just nonsense. And a role model, I think, that we could have gained a lot from is Puss in Boots. Look, I'm a big fan of this movie. I love it. I love it a lot. I don't know if it's my favorite animated movie, but it's up there, right? I like it a lot. And we have very similar relationship arc potential, right? With Quiet Place. So in Puss in Boots, Puss and Perrito, they're not friends. I mean, it's exactly the same, what's it called? Animosity. It's like, no, we are not friends. You know, like, he consistently tries to push her own way. But Puss is going through a lot. And over time, he seems to actually really like him. And when he is at his lowest, where he's like, I'm really afraid. I mean, it's so serious, but he's really afraid of dying. Perrito's right there to console him and to talk to him. And obviously at the end of the movie, he is grateful for him and they become friends. And it's a beautiful moment to see that change in Puss and what that means for the relationship. Why couldn't they do something like that for A Quiet Place? Like, why not? Like, legitimately, it's almost very similar. Like, they could have done that, where it's like, oh, she's going through a lot. Maybe she gets like a very close encounter, blah, 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 something like that, right? And he's there to console, and then like they build that bond where it's like, no, he's like, he could have like a line like that. Where he's like, look, I know it's my job to blah, 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 whatever, right? It's like, no, but I do care, right? And that's like his moment to prove it, because like at that point he's not working anymore, right? Like, what job? The world's over, basically. And they didn't do that. Very odd. It was very odd. They just killed him off instead. I want to circle back. Now that I'm getting suggestions, might as well. With the whole double motive, just don't do it. Just don't. Like, I feel like what the double motive did in this instance was kind of forget the fact that she has a very complicated situation that she's facing. And we're not just talking about obviously like these aliens or whatever, but that she's already dying, right? She has cancer. That is a lot to go through. It's like you're already dying, the world's ending around you. How are you even going to behave in that instance? Of course, survival was always kind of like instinctual, but that little element was completely dismissed. So double motive wasn't really needed. It was already a complex situation, and the motives that were potentially there, well, they just didn't even deal with that complexity. In fact, this goes back to our relationship arc that could have been. Like, maybe, like, I feel like a better direction would have been, oh, I don't even care anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I was already dying. What's this gonna, like, what does this guy do about anything? You know? And then the nurse is there to be sympathetic and help her, like, realize, like, no, your life is still worth fighting for. Like stuff like that. It just had all this emotional potential, and then the story abandoned all of it. Yeah, so that's I guess the bulk of my critique. I wish this movie was so much better. Yeah, if you're just looking for like a simple horror film, it's pretty good. But I do think that audiences deserve better, not just these grandiose images of like, oh wow, like, you know, this is intense, but also a deep story. And it could have been provided here. Well, that's all I have to say. Comment down below if you agree or disagree with any of these critiques. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a good one.